The Gene Deitch era from 1961 to 1962 of Tom and Jerry is one of the most distinctive and controversial periods in the iconic cat and mouse duo's history. Produced after the original MGM cartoon studio closed in 1957, only 13 shorts were made and represents a radical departure from the classic Hanna-Barbera era and even the later Chuck Jones era. MGM decided to revive Tom and Jerry, but on a much tighter budget. They commissioned Rebrand Films, an European animation company run by William L. Schneider, who outsourced the actual animation production to Gene Deitch and his team in Prague, Czechoslovakia. Deitch and his team worked with extremely limited budgets and tight schedules. They had no access to the original MGM storyboards or model sheets, forcing them to reinterpret the characters from scratch. The Czech animators, unfamiliar with the nuances of American slapstick and the specific personalities of Tom and Jerry as established by Hanna-Barbera, brought their own sensibilities and influences Eastern European animation surrealism to the table. The visual style was simplified and abstract, character designs are flatter, more angular, and less detailed. Movements are often stiff and less fluid. Backgrounds are minimalist, often using large blocks of color, simple shapes, and stark perspectives. They feel more like theatrical sets than realistic environments. Limited animation. Due to budget constraints, animation is often economical, relying more on held cells and limited movement compared to the full animation of the classic era. Stepan Koníček replaced Scott Bradley's orchestral music with dissonant jazz, vibraphones, and electronic sounds. Sound effects are often bizarre, exaggerated, or synthesized, adding to the surreal atmosphere. Slapstick sounds are less cartoony and more jarring or abstract. The tone and content is surreal and bizarre. The plots are often strange, dreamlike, and lack the straightforward chase logic of earlier cartoons. Settings and scenarios are frequently bizarre, darker and more cruel. The violence often feels more mean-spirited and less comedic. Some shorts have an underlying sense of melancholy, absurdity, or even existential dread, quite unlike the series' usual manic energy. Tom's character in this era is a radical departure from his classic portrayal. Stripped of his mischievous charm, comedic resilience, and rivalry-driven agency, Deitch Tom is reimagined as a tragic, often pathetic figure defined by suffering, helplessness, and existential dread. Tom loses his rounded, expressive Hanna-Barbera design. He becomes flatter, with sharper edges, minimal facial expressions, and jerky movements. His eyes often appear vacant or terrified, lacking the classic scheming glint. He frequently suffers extreme, almost sadistic punishment, sometimes from forces other than Jerry, like his owner, objects, or the environment. Jerry can also seem more malicious than mischievous. Tom often seems trapped in the nightmarish, illogical world. His struggles feel futile, as if he's a pawn in a cruel game. Jerry undergoes one of the most drastic reinterpretations in Tom and Jerry's history. Stripped of his classic role as the clever, sympathetic underdog, Deitch's Jerry becomes a detached, enigmatic, and often unsettling figure, less a hero and more a passive observer or even a secondary antagonist. Jerry loses his expressive, round-cheeked charm. His design is flatter, with angular features and vacant eyes. Movements are stiff, and lack the fluid agility of earlier eras. In classic Tom and Jerry, Jerry drives the conflict with clever schemes. Here, he's frequently a background element, while external forces like the environment, the owner, or surreal events torment Tom.
Don't touch my guns!
A supporting character that stands out in the Deitch era is Tom's owner. This character became infamous among fans and is also known as Clint Clobber. Is a bullying, overweight, middle-aged man who brutally punishes Tom for failures beyond his control, usually with a boot or other objects. Represents a faceless, oppressive authority. This dynamic shifts Tom's role from house cat to pest to abused underling. Tom's owner in the Gene Deitch era is one of the most infamous and disturbing elements of this period. He stopped making appearances after the episode Sorry Safari due to the horrendous backlash he received from critics, audiences, and fans. Some notable episodes that stand out: Down and Outing. This cartoon marks the first appearance of Tom's new owner for the era. In High Stakes, Tom is crushed and set on fire while grilling, a sequence that feels like a sadistic physics test. In Mouse into Space, Tom is forced into a rocket launch experiment by unseen scientists. He's strapped to a rocket, launched into orbit, and left to float helplessly in space, all while Jerry watches indifferently. Calypso Cat. This particular short is often considered one of the best of the 13 cartoons. Dickie Moe. Tom pursues Jerry on a whaling ship. In the Tom and Jerry cartoon kit, Deitch used this short to make a sarcastic commentary on the series' formulaic and excessively violent nature. Controversial and divisive, the Deitch era is almost universally considered the weakest and least popular among fans and critics. It's often criticized for betraying the core spirit and personalities of Tom and Jerry, ugly, cheap-looking animation, excessive cruelty and mean-spiritedness, the deeply unlikable human antagonist. Despite the criticism, it has developed a significant cult following. Some appreciate its unique, surreal, and experimental artistic style, its sheer strangeness and departure from the norm, its historical curiosity as an outsider's interpretation of an American icon. It represents a fascinating footnote in animation history, an early example of a major American animation being outsourced overseas, a showcase of how budget constraints and cultural differences can radically transform a beloved property, an influence on later, more deliberately surreal or abstract animation styles. The Gene Deitch Tom and Jerry era is a bizarre, low-budget, culturally disconnected experiment that resulted in 13 of the strangest and most divisive cartoons in the franchise history. While widely panned for its departure from the classic formula, its unique visual style, experimental music, and sheer weirdness have earned it a lasting, if controversial, place in animation history and a dedicated cult following. It's less a continuation of the classic series and more a surreal European art film interpretation of it.
If you have 60% of what you have dreamed of, that's a flaming success. And that's the way I feel about anything we've done.